We are going to talk about how to do LinkedIn profiles when there are some specific challenges that LinkedIn doesn't make it very easy to handle these days, or it seems easy to use it, but it's not really a feature that you would want to use because of the implications of it in search and also just in other things. So we're going to look at career changes a little bit. We're going to look at ageism, so career longevity on LinkedIn. We're also going to look at career gaps on LinkedIn. So those are the things I have planned. If there are other LinkedIn challenges that you would like to address, please let me know and we will get around and kind of circle back around to those as we have time. So let's see today how we can just get started, because this just isn't going to happen today. It's not going to work. It's not going to let me do what I want to do today for some reason, that's just the way it is. So those of you who are usually seeing us in the Facebook group, hopefully you've found us somewhere else, because it's not letting me play the way I want to play today. All right, actually, it looks like it is going to let me play. It just took a long time to figure itself out. Okay. There we go. Thank you. Feel free to say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from and any questions that you have specifically about LinkedIn and about how you can use LinkedIn. Having all kinds of technology challenges today. Now it says that I'm not live in LinkedIn. Okay, perfect. Got it all worked out. First thing. How do we handle it when we want to take a break? This is probably the most promoted thing that LinkedIn talks about, that you might want to not do what they say to do. So when you get into LinkedIn and you're looking at your LinkedIn profile, one of their newest options is that you can put in that you're taking a career break. There's several challenges with that. One is the perceived idea that gaps don't matter anymore, which data and reality tell us just isn't the case. People still judge those who have a career gap for any reason negatively, unfortunately. That's a big overarching spread. So yes, some companies are not worrying about it, but it's still not viewed as a positive thing by many hiring managers, many recruiters. So we want to be aware of that. And we also want to think about the gap in a different way. So if you're just joining us, yes, I know we just got into our Facebook group. Today, we're bringing you the now, the new, and the next in careers. We're talking specifically about LinkedIn and how we can manage some of the challenges in careers on LinkedIn. So nonlinear careers, the gaps in your work, and ageism are the three that I've got to cover, and then happy to answer or address any other challenges that you all see as well. So I'm going to pop over into LinkedIn. We're just going to look at what you can see when it offers you the opportunity to put in a career gap. The other challenge with using a career gap while we're on our way there is that you won't show up in recruiter search when they're searching for someone who has a current work, which when they go in and search, they can look for that. They can search for people who are currently in this job title. And they're not necessarily trying to eliminate people that have a gap. They're just looking for someone who's currently holding that job so that they can easily pluck them and put them into the same job. So it turns out perhaps being a little biased against gaps, but that isn't why they're there. It isn't why they're doing it. They're just trying to find people that can plug and do their job really quickly, which someone who has that current title is going to do. And of course, that's going to impact you if you have a career change, but it's also going to impact you if you are using the career gap feature. So here in LinkedIn, when I'm on my profile, I can come in and I can edit my profile. I can add an experience entry. And this is where that career gap piece comes in. So it's add a career break, and it's really obvious, really easy to find. It looks very enticing, like, oh, I should use this, right? But it's really not the best choice. And they give you some different options career transition, gap year. But again, the challenge is nobody is going to be searching for these. It's going to eliminate you from a lot of LinkedIn searches when you do that. So let's talk through the options that you could use, or that might be a better use if you're currently not employed, or you're currently doing something that's a little bit different than what you want to do. Let's start with the not employed piece. So instead of coming in here and putting in a career gap, what else could you do? There are several different options. So you could put in a project that you're working on and make it sound like a job. Now, I'm not talking about overdoing it or overstating it, but you do want to communicate it like you would communicate a job. So you'd come in here, you'd add a position. You may not be able to connect it to a company, but you could put in a title that's similar to the titles that you want if you are doing a project that's aligned with that. We don't want to be lying here. We want to show things that we're doing that are relevant, if at all possible. That's what I call the just not making it look like a gap at all. So let's say that you're in engineering, and a lot of the times I talk to people who are unemployed in engineering. They're doing some kind of consulting. Maybe they're doing some of their own projects on the side, design something that maybe they could sell, play around with something. You could put that project in as a current job. So that's an option. The second option, and actually this comes from data from a couple of years ago around gaps in resumes, is to put in some kind of coursework or class or certification that you could take. The brilliant thing about this is, of course, there's a million things that you can do online that are free that you could put in here. So this wouldn't be in the education section, it would actually be in the experience section. And in the title area, I would put what I am studying, but like I am doing it. So, and we'll use my engineer example. Let's say they're going and doing an artificial intelligence course. So I could put that in here, artificial intelligence. I might not be able to choose from one of these job descriptions. We know how powerful, a few weeks ago, we talked about how powerful the drop downs are. So I might not be able to feel like I can choose one of these, but at least I could say, artificial, I got to spell it right. That's important. Artificial intelligence. I'm just going to steal this and then change the end. So artificial intelligence, and maybe I'd say certification program or something like that. So at least it includes the first two words of the job title. It might still pull up in some of their searches. And maybe there'd be something that I'd feel comfortable with that would come up on this list, and I could put it in there. But I want to be careful. If I put in there consultant, I want to actually be doing consulting that I can speak to. I don't want to put that and then have someone ask me about it and not be able to answer to it. So if you're taking a course or a certification, go ahead and put that in there in the experience section. Get the role as tight, as close as you can, while being realistic and not lying. And then you could put in the organization you're taking the training from, but again, I'd be really careful about that, because you're not necessarily employed there. And then you could speak to what you're doing, what you're learning, any projects that you're doing. If they're suggest a project, even if it's not required, do the project so that you can put it in here in the content area. So that's one, I guess, a second way to fill the gap. So the first way is to put in some kind of consulting that you're doing that's relevant. Doesn't have to be paid, right? Nobody has to be paying you. If you're doing consulting for someone, a nonprofit, a friend or family member, if it's relevant and it's real, you can talk about it, put it in here to continue your work in the direction you want to go. If you're taking a class, if you're not taking one, go get signed up for one and get started so that you can use that to fill your gap. The not having anything and putting in a career gap from LinkedIn, probably about the same. Not great. Not, if that's all you've got, that's all you've got. I like the coursework and I like some kind of consulting. Now, if you want to go the extra mile, you can even set up a company profile for yourself. And if you're doing some real consulting, you could set up a company profile for yourself and actually link to that company profile when you put in that experience section. So those are a few ways to fill the gap. Let me check my comments and see if anyone else is sharing anything else about using that in your work. Anybody else doing anything else to cover a gap, please do let me know, and we will share it here with everybody else. Hopefully we got everything taken care of tech-wise, but we'll continue on. Okay, so that's the first challenge, is we want to cover that career gap. And I would hesitate to use this add a career break feature for many reasons. I'd rather that we put in something to fill that gap that's relevant when at all possible. A course, a work experience, consulting, a free volunteer thing, whatever you're doing, use the title that is relevant. So, even if I'm volunteering, I would want to create a title for myself that is aligned to what I'm doing and that the organization I'm volunteering for would back up and show up in those searches because of those relevant job titles. So the next thing is if you're making a career change. So career changes on any platform, but specifically on LinkedIn are challenging because you only get one profile, right? You only get to have one profile built out for yourself. So if you're employed and you're making a career change, that can be challenging because you've got to keep your profile kind of all cohesive together. If you are unemployed and making a career change, you actually have a little bit more flexibility because we could use some of those experiences you're getting to make the career change to also fill the gap. And if you're wanting to do that all in one profile, you just, first of all, always have to be clear about where you're going. It's really hard to tell a story. Well, I would say to draw a map when you don't have a destination. So if you want to go in and write some content in your profile, you really need to know who's your audience, what are they needing to know, what are the skill sets that are going to be most important to them, and then you can have an easier time connecting the dots, putting that content together that really speaks to either both careers or to the one that you're changing into. You would still have to indicate a company, Linda, but you wouldn't necessarily have to connect it to a company profile. So Linda has asked, if you're using the coursework option, do you not indicate a company? And you can type in the company and not select anything. So let's say that I am, I almost shared the wrong screen. So let's say that I'm in here and I wanted to add that coursework as a position. I'm just going to use artificial intelligence certification, whatever that is. And then let's say that I'm getting it from, I could put part-time, I could put one of these other things in here. It doesn't really matter that much. And then I can put in the company name. I could put Microsoft. I don't remember what they call it, like open enrollment. It just depends on what your client is comfortable with. I would not be comfortable with connecting it to Microsoft because then it feels like I work there. I would type in something like this. It's not going to show up if an employer is searching for people to work for Microsoft, but that's just my comfort level. You would have to talk to your client, say, who are you taking the course from? And how do you want to handle that here if we're putting the course in as an experience? To me, it feels like stretching the truth to put Microsoft and connect it to the company page as if I worked there. And you may be able to, I don't know, if you pull up a school page, again, it kind of sounds like you work there. You'll just have to navigate that with each individual in terms of what they feel comfortable with. And it may be how many credits, if I was taking a 6 course, even 2 courses, 3 courses in a school, I might feel a little bit more comfortable putting the school in there and connecting it to the school profile. But I would just be a little bit careful about that. And you can decide that with your client, how they want to list that, how they want to connect it in. So if you were writing for someone that had a gap earlier in their career, it depends a little bit on how long the gap was and how long ago it was. If it was just a few years ago, I would address that gap somehow. Same kinds of options that I could address it with education. I could address it with some kind of volunteering or experience that they had, or I could address it with a very simple statement like a career gap and just be brief about it. Um, and you could use that career gap feature for that when it's not the current job. But just be careful about, we know motherhood bias still exists. We know some of those things. So even though it may be kind of out there in the popular media that it's everybody's okay with that, the data just doesn't support that. So I'd want to have a real conversation with the person about how we communicate that career gap and what that means and what that could say, and the realistic pieces of how that could impact their career. But if it's a few years ago, let's say it's 10 years ago and it was only a couple of years, I might not address it because it's just going to start adding more to the story. If it was within the last 10 years and it was a couple of years long or longer, I might use that career gap feature to fill it. If I don't have anything in a volunteer capacity or in a consulting capacity or educational capacity that could fill the gap. Okay, LinkedIn headline and summary section have two backgrounds. Yeah, so actually I posted a video today on YouTube where I went through some of that. I'll circle back around to it here in just a little bit. Kind of fits in with the career change information that we're going to talk about here in a second too. Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Linda. Love it. Questions? So when you're talking about career change, the most important thing is that the person has a goal in mind. When you have that goal in mind, it creates, like I said, that the map, right? You could say, okay, this is where I want to go. What do I need to get there? And I can look at the skills that are required by that job. I can do the work that Denise and I were talking about a couple of weeks ago to find the keywords that are relevant for that career. And then I can go back into my background and I can translate what I've done in the past into that language of the future job. But I can only do that when I have that future job goal. So let's say that I've been in community health and now I want to go into the career space, right? So I could look at all of the keywords associated with careers, types of jobs, and I could say, okay, so in my background, I was counseling people. It was on a different content, but I was still doing, counseling or coaching in that community health space, maybe doing some training, maybe working with the community to build relationships. So I'd look for those pieces that translate out of the community health world into the career space, because now I've got the goalposts with the keywords that a careers job is looking for. And I'd look at the examples in my background and do as much as I can to translate them out of that language into the language of the future. Now, what happens if you're still employed is that instead of translating it all the way to the future job, you're kind of meeting in the middle. So if I'm working in the community health space still, I might still tell those stories, but I'm just use a little different language so that when someone from the career space profile, they can see those career keywords. And I might even be able to get some of those keywords into my title fields or my headline fields based on those keywords that I know are important now that also relate back to what I was doing before. And if you missed that session with Denise, I'd recommend that you go back and watch it. And you could drop a note where you wanted the prompt in that video, and we'd send you this prompt that she uses in generative AI to say, okay, this was my job description. This is the new job description I'm targeting. Tell me where the skills overlap. And AI will build that matrix for you of where the skills overlap and what are the skills that are most visible in both types of careers, so that then you could write stories that illustrate those skills that appear in both careers. And you're just always thinking about the language of the future. You want to tell the story in that language, not in the language of the past. So one of our resume writing things that we do for all of our resume writing students is they have to write a resume for someone who is in sales, but they're trying to get out of insurance and into medical device, medical support kinds of fields. So if they've been in insurance, now they're moving into medical. Those are two different things, but the thing that's similar is sales. So we focus the resume, the language, the accomplishments on the sales piece and downplay the industry to help them make that transition. So instead of saying that I sold property and casualty insurance, right, I'm just going to say that I sold a product and this was the result. And that's what you want to think about is how do I take that accomplishment from my old work and move it into the language of the new work, or at the very least, just take away some of the language of the industry so that the actual accomplishment shines. The what I did shines instead of where. And that's a lot of what we do as resume writers because it's hard to do for oneself. And it's somewhat hard for AI to do because it doesn't know your stories. You could write your stories, put them into AI, and then have them translate it. You just have to be really careful because it can put in things that aren't quite right. And if you don't know the language of the future job, you might not know that. So do your research, do your homework, go through those job descriptions, really understand the qualifications, and then you can write your profile either all the way translated if you know you're making the move, or kind of to that middle point of focusing on the bigger picture that floods across both things that you've done. You can do that in the headline. You can do that in the summary section, about section, and you can even do that in the experience sections. Actually, it's really important that you think about the experience sections too, because most recruiters or people who are looking at LinkedIn, they will look at your experience sections quickly before they go back and read the about. Because if you don't have the job titles, if you don't have the experiences they're looking for, why would they kind of waste their time reading the about section? And even when you just look visibly at your LinkedIn profile, if I look at my public profile here, maybe if it will let me do that real quick. Then you see, and it's kind of messy because it's in the other view. Let me see if I can more. Nope. Used to be able to view your profile, but anyways, the job titles are big and bold, right? And so when you look at those and you skim down them, you want to spend some time thinking about the job titles and how you can translate those and get in the keywords of the future. Because if I look down those job titles and I don't see anything relevant to what I'm hiring for, I'm automatically just going to move past because I want someone that's done what I'm hiring for. And there may be, fields where there's a little more flexibility in that, but the more work that I can do as a candidate or that I can have a resume writer or a LinkedIn profile writer help me with, the more that I can look like a fit realistically and in good conscience, the better off I will be in terms of getting people to click through. So those job titles are going to be huge. You want to get the keywords of the future in there. You want to get the words in there that speak to the job that you want to do. So that's just, and I really can't show you that well because my profile's showing in this view, but you can see that the job titles are big and bold. And in the recruiter search view, even more so, especially your current title shows up in that paid recruiter search view. So you want to really think about those titles and what they mean, how they convey your connection to the job you're targeting as quickly as possible while still being real, while still being truthful. All right. Video you referenced that Denise. So that is in our YouTube channel. If you go to the Career Thought Leaders YouTube channel, it was, let me drop the link for you. It's a little bit hard to share here, but I will drop the link, and that at the very least that will remind me to come back and do it again. So this is the one, this is the full version, like the long version where we went through all the things. And you can also find a little shorter clip uploaded video that we did, just a clip of that video. If you want to watch the shorter version, you can do that too. So those are the videos where we went through the keyword search and how do you find the right keywords, and the prompt that connects the two keywords from one job to another. Excellent. Oh, Valerie, I'm sorry that you can't hear us. That's a bummer. I know I was having problems with my audio, but now on my end, it looks like it's fixed. So hopefully you'll be able to go back and listen later. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about today is ageism. And of course, when we do a LinkedIn profile, we might want to go back further than we do on a resume. We might want to connect that someone worked at a company, even though it was a while ago. We want to be able to show that they were an employee of a company and connect to that company profile there in LinkedIn. So we're always having to weigh kind of the pros and cons. How important is it to connect to that company profile versus the fact that if I'm going back 25, 30 years, I might open that door for ageism. And there are pictures on there, so some of that age is going to be obvious, but we might not want to be able to calculate the dates all the way back. And there are a few things that you can do to bring in older experience, even if you don't put the full dates on there. So let's walk through those here a little bit with the ageism piece. And then I'll come back. I see another question about career change. So let me get the right view here. Almost shared the one where I'm live. we could watch me talking, watching me talking. So in here, in your profile, you have a few different options. So the one is, let's say you're going to go back with dates 10, 15 years. You could put a little section in that job experience that says like previous work included, and you could have it just right there in your experience section for the oldest one that you want to put in. You could say, earlier work experience included, and you could put the roles and dates just like we do on a resume when we've got kind of that early career experience section on a resume, without dates, with dates, whatever our choices are. Although if you're going to put dates, you probably just want to put it as a separate section. This is going to work best when that older experience is with the same company that you've got this experience for. So if I had worked at the Larimer County Workforce before 2009, and I didn't want to put in those dates, I could just put in, the earlier work experience and give a short summary of that right here in this entry of the latest job. The other option that we have is to put something in the About section. So that might be a little bit more visible. I could put in the company names. It's not going to be the same as connecting to the actual company profile, but I could at the bottom of my About section. Do we usually want to talk about the more recent stuff first, but then at the bottom of my About section, I could say something about, my early career included roles at, drop some of those names and put in some of that information. We're always just weighing the costs and benefits. I worked with a gentleman who was a little bit older, and he wanted to consult with some of the Silicon Valley startups. That was where he had started his career. He had moved then to a bigger company, moved to Colorado, but he had actually been in Silicon Valley when it was in its infancy. And so we wanted to tell that story. We told that story a little bit in his About section, but then he decided to put those organizations in his profile, even though the experience was older and it kind of dated him, because it was that important to him the benefits that outweighed the cost. So you just want to think about, how are you positioning the client? We were positioning him as a consultant anyways, so that experience made sense. So we want to think about the positioning. We also want to think about, ageism is real, and what might the chances of that happening be. And then we want to think about the company name dropping. Is it worth it? How much value is it really going to add for the client? So I'm curious, those of you out there, you see people with their headline, and their headline says X Amazon, X Google. Do you think that's a good thing for clients to do or not, and why? I'd love to hear from you. Share in the comments, even if you're watching the replay later. Do we want to name drop in our headline? Because that's another option, would be to bring in some of those older companies and name drop them in the headline. And everybody's got to make that decision for themselves and how they want to brand themselves. So if someone's making a transition, do I recommend saying that? Be careful of your words. So I want it to be positive and future focused. When someone says that they have transferable skills, it's usually a red flag to most people, saying that I don't have the skills to do this job, so I'm trying to fluff it over. Because most of the time when people talk about transferable skills, they talk about fluff. And soft skills are important, but they're the icing, right? The hard skills are the cake. So we've got to have the cake of the hard skills, which can be transferable, but I just don't usually call them that. We make the translation, which is why I like to use translate instead of transferable. We've got to translate the skills from their old work to the new work. We want to tell the story of why they're interested in this work, why they're pursuing it, how they maybe are getting into it, those types of stories. But I always want it to be rooted in value and coming from a position of strength. It's a phrase Kimberly Spate, one of our instructors, uses a lot. We want it to come from a position of strength. And a lot of times when people use the language transition or transferable, they're not coming from a position of strength. It sounds like a wannabe. I don't want my clients to sound like a wannabe. I want them to sound like an is. So I want to take what they've done before and show how that really is what they're going to do now, maybe just in a different role, in a different industry. But I don't want it to sound like they want to be something. I really want to draw the connections and show that they do have those skills, and now they're wanting to move into this new industry for whatever reason. And it's just a slight difference of language. We have to be careful about that and how we message for the candidate that position of power, that they are qualified for the job. Excellent. Okay, so I think we've answered all the questions. We went through my examples. If you have other questions, other things you'd like to cover, please do let me know. Always excited to come on here. We do have one more week where we'll be talking about LinkedIn profiles. I'll go back and collect some of the information that we haven't talked about yet. We do have a session tomorrow. So tomorrow we have a session that Denise and I are doing on writing LinkedIn profiles and how to put them together in a way using AI or not using AI that is not generic, but really connects to the reader. So we're going to be doing that tomorrow, or you can always get the recording, get lifetime access to the recording. And then next Wednesday, we start our Academy Certified Profile Writer class, which is our writing classes are very in-depth. You write, we give you feedback. You write, we give you feedback. It's not a one and done. It's really a class where you get to dive deep and improve your writing. So if you want to take kind of a master's degree in profile writing, you can find that at Academy Certified Profile Writer program. And we'd love to have you join us in that starting next Wednesday, or in the LinkedIn Genius class tomorrow. If you have any other topics or questions about LinkedIn you'd like answered, drop them here. I'll come back and check this before we decide the topics for next week, or you can shoot me an email as well. And we'll be back next week to keep talking about the now, the new, and next in careers on our Trend Tuesday. Thank you, everyone.